Hey, welcome back to another video for our PHP e-commerce app. We're moving on to milestone number 4, which is going to implement the shopping cart. And so milestone 4 will be part 1 of the shopping cart experience. So in this milestone, we're going to talk about two different ways we could do persistence. Now, persistence is the idea that when you have a data that's stored, does it stay permanently in your cart or does it disappear? So persistence can be session persistence or it could be login persistence. We'll talk about how to design an object called cart, and the object will show what's being currently stored. Then we'll talk about using the cart in a session variable, and so this is the demonstration that I'll be showing you. And then we'll talk about testing out the cart. We're going to create a file that can test the operations such as add to cart and show cart and delete from the cart. We'll also talk about the money format, so how you can show dollar signs and decimal points using PHP. We'll also just talk about updating the quantities of the items in your cart so you can add or remove more than one item. So first of all, the first question that comes up is about persistence. And so you could implement your persistence using a database table. And so you can see in the picture here, I've put a table here called cart. And so each user would have a cart, and each cart would have a number of items in it, such as the product ID and the number of each product. So it would be a table. Now, in the persistence using the session variable, which is what I'm going to show you, we could have an object or an array that just shows the number of each product that you have added, and then the quantity. So, and you can see in my list I have an array called items, and so this items array has 3 products. It has product ID 2, 7, and 21. Number 7 has a quantity of 3 in it. Also in my cart, I implemented a subtotal so you can see how much money that the person spent, and so it helps in calculations inside the object. Now the advantages that you could say are one or the other. If you wanted to store your persistence in the database, it would be more permanent. So if the user closes his browser and reopens it, then the cart will still be there. And so we don't want to have this here where the user comes up with a cart is empty error. And so Amazon and other online retailers obviously know that people add things to the cart, and then later, maybe days later, maybe longer, they come back and do a checkout. And so putting your cart in the database is good for business. However, the disadvantage to the cart design in the database is that every time you add an item to the cart, it causes a processing bottleneck, you might say. So it creates more traffic, creates more database transactions, and that might not be a problem, but just be aware that it would impact your performance. So the advantages to the database in the cart is that you already know how to add items to a table. So we've added new products, we've added new users, so it would just be adding another table. Now you might not know how to do this with a session variable. And so as a result, I'm going to be selecting number 2 and showing you some tutorials on how to use the session variable. So if you don't want to use the session variable, go for it. Use the cart as a database table and your design will probably work great. Now let's take a look at the differences between these next 2 milestones, number 4 and number 5. They both are about carts. So in milestone 4, we're only going to use the scope of how to implement the add to cart button and maybe update quantities button. But what we're going to do in here is add items to the cart and delete items from the cart and update the quantities. And so the cart will just be another screen that we have. The checkout button won't come until number 5. So in milestone 5, we're going to have a checkout process. And so that process will include validating a credit card number. We'll create a record called the order and then the order details. So 5 will be a little bit more like extending from 4. So those are the videos we're going to be taking a look at for this milestone. We've already talked about number 1. So we'll go on to number 2 next, which will create an object called cart.